President-elect Donald Trump hit headlines early this week with his announcement that his upcoming administration would impose 100% tariffs on BRICS countries if they attempted to create a currency alternative to the US dollar. In a post that's typically Trumpist, Donald said, "The idea that the BRICS countries are trying to move away from the dollar while we stand by and watch is over. We require a commitment from these countries that they will neither create a new BRICS currency nor back any other currency to replace the mighty US dollar, or they will face 100% tariffs and should expect to say goodbye to selling into the wonderful US economy. They can go find another sucker. There is no chance that the BRICS will replace the US dollar in international trade, and any country that tries should wave goodbye to America." The threat affects us, India being part of the BRICS formation. But who's trying to replace the US dollar? Our External Affairs Minister clarified, not us.
I think you have us confused for someone else here, because we have never actively targeted the dollar. That's not part of either our economic policy or our political or our strategic policy.
Trump's outburst reflects concerns in the United States about the rest of the world moving away from the use of dollar as the preferred currency of trade. The dollar came into its own sometime after the First World War, as the USA replaced the declining British Empire as the largest economy of the world. As the chief supplier of arms, ammunition, and much else during the Second World War, the place of the American greenback as the most preferred currency of global trade was cemented. For a century since then, it has been the reserve currency of the world, giving the United States a force multiplier to muscle its superpower status. Over a period of time, the US came to use that status to manipulate its foreign relations and indeed the world order to its own designs. Controlling the nerves of global financial system and the markets, US leveraged oversized dollar dominance to impose sanctions against nations it thought were not aligned to its values, the latest example being Russia. But geoeconomic and geopolitical changes in the past 2 decades have tapered off that dollar hegemony, led by the rise of China and the shift in global trade away from the United States. The world increasingly finds itself having options. Listen to this.
Why is it necessary for us to buy things from Djibouti and pay in dollars? Why? And we are not against the US dollar. We just want to trade much more freely. Let us pay in US dollars what we are buying from the US. But what we are buying from Djibouti, let's use local currency.
This is President of Kenya, William Ruto, coming out openly for chucking out the US dollar from African trade. This was in June 2023. This year in April, Zimbabwe pivoted its currency away from the dollar, and about half a dozen countries in the African continent have been gradually shifting to greater use of their own currencies in local trade. Nigeria, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, Sudan, and Congo have evolved robust mechanisms to trade with each other in their own currencies, even as Ruto emphasized creating a Pan-Africa alternative to the dollar in that soundbite that went viral last year. Brazil and China have ditched the dollar in bilateral trade, as also Argentina when it came to its commodities trade with China, settling bills in the Chinese yuan. Can you see a pattern? Most of these changes have shaped up post the start of the Ukraine war in 2022. With the sanctions regime imposed by the US and its allies against Russia, many nations across the globe realized the perils of having dollar as the reserve currency in their central banks. They were simply susceptible to arm twisting and US manipulations. India, on its part, had a rupee-ruble system with Russia, as also rupee trade with Iran to begin with, both countries incidentally facing a strong sanctions regime from the United States. In fact, at last count, there are 18 nations with whom India carries out rupee-denominated trade transactions. But that still remains a minuscule part of the overall trade basket. Like in the case with Russia, we had to suspend the rupee-ruble route as Russia had a problem of plenty. It had billions of rupees through its trade with India and did not know what to do with it. One Russian investments in India do not justify that kind of rupee storage. 2, Indian rupee cannot be used globally. So that, in a way, underscores the limitations of de-dollarization in the present stage, at least. According to data from the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, in Q4 of 2024, 58.22% of the reported foreign currency reserves in the world were in the US dollar, 19.76% in euro, and the renminbi accounted for just 2.14% of global forex reserves. The corresponding figures for 2022 were 58.36, 20.47, and 2.69%, as you see in the graphics. Which means that while the US dollar continues to cede ground to other currencies in global trade, the pace is slower than slow. Also, China holds roughly $4 trillion in its foreign reserves, the size of India's GDP. It is not in China's interest to bat for de-dollarization unless it wants to fast-track its own economic collapse. That leaves Russia facing the maximum brunt of the West-led financial sanctions regime for the last 2 years. Moscow has been making the loudest pitch for a dollar alternative. But even here, President Putin couches it in a lot of his smartness. Holding a media interaction in Moscow on Wednesday, Putin said they did not seek de-dollarization. It's a fait accompli America invited upon itself by seeking to alter the world order and thus making the rest respond to shield themselves from the consequent instability. Long after Trump and his bluff and bluster strategies to deal with the issue have gone, the world would have achieved substantial de-dollarization. It's a tide the United States cannot stop. Part technology, part change geopolitical map of the world would make sure it happens. On the other part of Trump's threat, the 100% tariff, I shall come to it closer to Trump's inauguration, by which time hopefully there will be more clarity on how strongly he intends to disrupt global trade. Thanks for watching.